3 weeks had passed since the humans walked out of the council chamber. 3 weeks of emergency meetings, angry debates, and growing panic among the ethereal leadership. Finally, the decision was made. The pacification fleet would handle the human problem the same way they had handled every other stubborn species for 3,000 years. Admiral Kim Dong-woo stood on the bridge of the Incheon's Pride, watching the approaching council ships on his displays. 200 vessels in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the silver and gold colors of council authority. They looked impressive, exactly as they were meant to. Kim was a veteran of the Colonial Defense Force, a man in his 50s with graying hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, though he had hoped it would never come. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Choi Ha-na from the engineering station, "enemy fleet is holding position at the edge of our sensor range. They're powering up communication arrays." "Let them talk," Kim said quietly. "Captain Yu, are your ships ready?" Captain Yu Min-ho commanded the destroyer Busan Thunder, part of Kim's defensive screen. His ship was smaller than most council vessels, but it bristled with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Crews are eager to show these council bullies what humans can do." The communication request came through moments later. On the main screen appeared the image of Fleet Commander Zixthul, a tall ethereal with golden light patterns marking his rank. His expression was the mixture of boredom and superiority that all council officials wore when dealing with primitive species. "Human vessels," Zixthul said in his echoing voice. "I am Fleet Commander Zixthul of the Galactic Council Pacification Fleet. You are in violation of Council directives. Shut down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to processing stations." Admiral Kim stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "Fleet Commander, this is Admiral Kim Dong-woo of the Human Defense Force. You are in violation of human space. You have 30 seconds to turn around and leave." Zixthul's light patterns flickered with what might have been amusement. "Admiral Kim, you face 200 Council warships with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Your 80 ships appear to be primitive by comparison. Surely you can see the futility of resistance." 25 seconds, Kim said calmly. The fleet commander's expression changed slightly. He had expected fear, begging, or at least some attempt at negotiation. The humans seemed almost relaxed, as if facing a council fleet was just another day at work. "Admiral, I will give you one more chance. Surrender now and your people will be treated with respect during processing. Continue this foolishness and we will be forced to disable your ships and take you by force." 15 seconds, Kim replied. On the destroyer Busan Thunder, Captain Yu Min-ho was having a quiet conversation with his weapons officer. "Park, do we have targeting solutions on their command ships?" "Yes, sir," replied Lieutenant Park Gi-hun, a young man whose fingers danced over his control panel. "All primary targets locked. Railgun systems charged and ready." 10 seconds, Admiral Kim announced. Fleet Commander Zixthul finally realized that the humans were serious. His light pattern shifted to aggressive orange. "Very well, Admiral. You have chosen your fate. All ships prepare suppression beams. Disable their engines and weapons. Try not to cause too much damage." The first council ship to fire was the cruiser Eternal Harmony. Its suppression beam, designed to overload enemy power systems, lanced out toward the Incheon's Pride. The beam struck the human flagship's shields and scattered harmlessly into space. Admiral Kim watched the light show with mild interest. "Interesting. Their suppression technology is exactly what our intelligence predicted. Lieutenant Choi, return fire. Single shot, minimum power." "Yes, sir," Choi Ha-na replied from her engineering station. Her fingers moved over her controls with practiced ease. "Railgun charging. Targeting their cruiser's engine section, firing." The Incheon's Pride's main cannon spoke once. There was no dramatic energy beam or glowing projectile, just a blur of motion too fast for the eye to follow, and then the Eternal Harmony simply ceased to exist. Where a massive council cruiser had been floating moments before, there was now only expanding debris and the fading glow of a contained fusion explosion. The council fleet froze in shock. In 3,000 years of galactic warfare, no one had ever destroyed a council ship with a single shot. Fleet Commander Zixthul stared at his displays in disbelief. How is that possible?" Their technology readings showed primitive weapon systems. On the human flagship, Lieutenant Choi Ha-na checked her readings with professional calm. "Direct hit on target, Admiral. Railgun system operating at 12% capacity. Minimal power draw from our reactors, 12%. The humans had just vaporized a council cruiser using barely more power than it took to run their life support systems. Admiral Kim opened communications again. Fleet Commander Zixthul, you now have a new 30-second countdown to leave our space. I suggest you don't waste it. The council fleet was already moving before he finished speaking. Ships that had approached in perfect military formation scattered like frightened fish. Some tried to maintain dignity by retreating in good order, but others simply turned and ran at maximum speed. Captain Yu Min-ho watched them go with satisfaction. Admiral, should we pursue? Negative, Captain. Let them report back to their superiors. The council needs to understand what they're dealing with. As the last council ship disappeared into hyperspace, Lieutenant Park Gi-hun looked up from his weapons station. Sir, that felt almost too easy. Their technology was exactly what our intelligence reports predicted. Admiral Kim nodded slowly. For 200 years, humanity had been watching the Council from the shadows. They had observed Council military exercises, analyzed captured technology, and studied every aspect of the galactic government that claimed to rule all intelligent life. What they had found was disturbing. The Council maintained power through technological intimidation, but their actual technology hadn't advanced in centuries. They relied on the same weapons, the same tactics, the same strategies they had used for millennia. They had grown comfortable, lazy, and arrogant. Humanity, meanwhile, had spent those same centuries advancing rapidly. Human railguns could punch through Council shields like paper. Human shields could absorb Council weapons with ease. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and far more powerful than anything in the Council fleet. The aliens had expected to face a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, they had encountered a civilization that had surpassed them in every meaningful way. Communications, Admiral Kim called out. Send a message to Earth Command. First contact with Council military forces complete. Enemy capabilities confirmed to match intelligence estimates. No human casualties. 1 Council cruiser destroyed. Request instructions for next phase. As his message traveled toward Earth, Kim looked out at the stars beyond his viewport. Somewhere out there, the Council was learning that their 3,000-year reign as the galaxy's dominant power was over. They just didn't know it yet. The real war was about to begin, and humanity was ready for it. They had been ready for a very long time. The emergency session in the Council's highest chambers had been going for 16 hours straight. High Counselor Mordeth, the most senior ethereal in the galaxy, floated at the center of the room while holographic displays showed the same impossible footage over and over again. A human ship destroying a Council cruiser with 1 shot. A fleet of 200 vessels retreating from 80 primitive-looking human ships. Play it again, Mordeth commanded, his ancient voice heavy with disbelief. The hologram flickered to life once more. The Eternal Harmony, a cruiser that had served the Council for 8 centuries, firing its suppression beam at the human flagship. The beam scattering harmlessly off the human ship's shields. Then, in a flash too quick to see clearly, the cruiser was gone. Just debris and fading energy. Analysis? Mordeth asked. Counselor Thexandra manipulated the holographic controls, slowing the recording down frame by frame. The human weapon appears to be kinetic rather than energy-based. A projectile traveling at approximately 15% of light speed. The impact released energy equivalent to a small antimatter warhead. Impossible, muttered Counselor Zechthul. No species has developed kinetic weapons capable of such velocity. The power requirements alone would drain their entire ship. Yet here we are, Mordeth said quietly, watching it happen. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Kang Ye-jin stood before the Global Defense Assembly in Seoul. The massive chamber was packed with representatives from every human colony, military leaders, and scientists. The time for secrets was over. Ladies and gentlemen, President Kang began. For the past 2 centuries, humanity has maintained a careful deception. While the Galactic Council believed we were a young species just learning to travel between stars, we have actually been studying them, learning their weaknesses. Preparing for this day, she gestured to the large display behind her which showed star maps of Council space. Our first contact with galactic civilization occurred in 2157, when one of our deep space exploration ships discovered a Council monitoring station. Rather than announcing ourselves, we chose to remain hidden and observe. Dr. Shin Woo-jin, head of the Xenological Research Division, stepped forward. He was a thin man with tired eyes and graying hair. someone who had spent decades analyzing alien technology and finding ways to improve upon it. What we discovered, Dr. Shin said, was deeply troubling. The Galactic Council maintains its authority through technological superiority and economic dependency, but their technology has not advanced meaningfully in over 1,000 years. They have become comfortable with their dominance and stopped innovating. The display changed to show comparative technology analyses. Human railgun systems next to Council energy weapons. Human shield generators compared to Council defensive screens. Human faster-than-light drives alongside Council hyperspace technology. In every category, Dr. Shin continued, human technology now exceeds Council capabilities by significant margins. Our railguns can penetrate any shield they possess. Our shields can absorb their most powerful weapons without strain. Our ships are faster, more maneuverable, and far more efficient, a voice called out from the assembly. But how did we advance so quickly? 200 years isn't long in galactic terms. Dr. Shin smiled slightly, because we didn't start from scratch. We studied captured Council technology and improved upon it. More importantly, we maintained the one thing the Council has lost, the drive to keep improving. They became satisfied with being the strongest force in the galaxy. We never stopped trying to become stronger. Captain Lee Myung-soo, commander of the intelligence ship Soul Ghost, took the podium next. His ship had spent the last 50 years moving through Council space in disguise, gathering information and mapping their weaknesses. The Council's member worlds are not as loyal as they appear, Captain Lee reported. Our intelligence networks have identified growing dissatisfaction on hundreds of planets. High taxes, military conscription, resource extraction that benefits only the Council elite. Many worlds stay loyal only because they believe the Council is too powerful to resist. President Kang nodded, which brings us to the current situation. The Council expected us to behave like every other species they've encountered, submit to their authority, accept their terms, become another source of resources and tribute, but we are not like the species they conquered centuries ago. The display showed footage from the recent battle, Council ships fleeing from human forces that appeared smaller and weaker. The message we sent by destroying their cruiser was simple. The President continued, "We are not afraid of you. We are not impressed by you, and we will not submit to you." Back on Concordia Prime, the Emergency Council session was reaching desperate conclusions. Fleet Commander Zixthul had arrived to give his personal report, his golden light patterns dim with what appeared to be shame. "High Counselor," Zixthul said, "the humans fought with technology I have never encountered. Their weapons penetrated our best shields as if they didn't exist. Their own shields absorbed our suppression beams without effect. Most troubling, they seemed to know exactly what we were capable of before we demonstrated it." "What do you mean?" Mordeth asked. "They showed no surprise at our weapons or tactics, no fear of our numbers. They responded to our attacks as if they had expected exactly what we would do. Either they are incredibly lucky, or they have been studying us for a very long time." The implications of this statement rippled through the chamber. If humanity had been observing Council forces without detection, if they had developed superior technology in secret, then everything the Council thought they knew about the galactic balance of power was wrong. Counselor Thexandra spoke up, her voice tight with concern. "High Counselor, we must consider the possibility that other species have been watching our response to the human situation. If word spreads that the Council can be defied successfully..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood. The Council's authority rested on the belief that resistance was impossible. If that belief was shattered, their empire of 800 worlds could collapse overnight. "What do we know about human military strength?" Mordeth asked. "Very little," admitted Intelligence Director Vexthari. "Our standard observation methods have been ineffective. Their colonies appear lightly defended, but after today's demonstration, we must assume those appearances are deceptive. For all we know, every human settlement could be a fortress." The truth was beginning to dawn on the Council leadership. They were not dealing with a primitive species that needed to be brought into line. They were facing an opponent that might be more advanced than they were, an opponent that had been preparing for this confrontation for generations. "High Counselor," Zixthul said quietly, "there is one more thing. Before they destroyed our cruiser, the human admiral gave us multiple opportunities to withdraw. They could have opened fire immediately and destroyed our entire fleet. Instead, they chose to demonstrate their power with minimal casualties. What are you suggesting? That perhaps the humans are not the aggressors in this situation. Perhaps we are. The chamber fell silent as the weight of that statement settled over the assembled council members. For 3,000 years, they had been the undisputed masters of the galaxy. Now, for the first time, they were forced to consider the possibility that their reign was over. 6 months after first contact, the galaxy looked completely different. President Kang Ye-jin stood at the podium of the newly constructed Galactic Democratic Assembly on the neutral station Unity Prime. Behind her sat representatives from over 400 worlds, species that had chosen freedom over forced membership in the old council system. The assembly hall buzzed with dozens of different languages, translation devices working overtime to allow real communication between species that had been kept apart by council policies for centuries. It was chaotic, loud, and beautiful in a way the sterile council chambers had never been. Representatives of the free galaxy, President Kang began. Her words translated instantly into hundreds of languages. 6 months ago, humanity made a simple choice. We chose freedom over security, independence over protection, and cooperation over domination. Today, we see the results of that choice. The display screens around the chamber showed the current state of galactic civilization. The old council controlled fewer than 200 worlds, mostly core systems where ethereal influence remained strong. The rest of the galaxy had organized itself into various alliances, federations, and independent systems. Most importantly, every world had chosen its own path freely. Admiral Kim Dong-woo, now commanding the Combined Defense Fleet, watched the ceremony from his flagship. Through his viewports, he could see ships from dozens of species, all working together to patrol the space lanes and ensure that no world was forced to join any faction against its will. "Admiral," called out his communications officer, "we're receiving a priority message from the Chronari homeworld. They're reporting Void Hunter activity in the Outer Rim. They're requesting assistance." Kim nodded. The Void Hunters were one of the real threats the Council had used to justify their authority. Energy beings from the space between galaxies, they consumed entire star systems to fuel their reproduction. The old Council had claimed only their massive fleets could handle such threats. "Deploy Task Force 7 to the Chronari sector," Kim ordered, "and contact the Draconian Defense Corps. Their quantum disruptor technology is particularly effective against Void Hunter ships." This was how the new galaxy worked. When threats arose, free worlds cooperated to deal with them. No single power dominated or commanded others. Each species contributed what they could and received help when they needed it. Dr. Shin Woo-jin stood in his new laboratory aboard the Research Station Innovation, watching alien and human scientists work side by side on projects that would have been impossible under Council rule. The old system had hoarded technology, keeping advanced knowledge limited to Council elites. The new system shared everything. Dr. Shin called out his assistant, Dr. Lisa Chen. "The Zenthian team has achieved a breakthrough in quantum field manipulation. Combined with our railgun technology, we might be able to create defensive systems that can protect entire star systems." Shin smiled as he watched a young human engineer explain human manufacturing techniques to a group of fascinated alien scientists. "Excellent. Make sure the research is shared with all member worlds, and see if the Vorthak delegation wants to contribute their expertise in exotic matter manipulation." This was the key difference between the old and new orders. The Council had maintained power by keeping species separated and dependent. Humanity had gained power by bringing species together and making them stronger. Captain Yu Min-ho, now commanding a joint human-alien crew aboard his ship, received an unusual communication request. The caller was Veltharion, the former Council Prime who now served as planetary governor of the ethereal homeworld. "Captain Yu." Veltharion's image appeared on the screen, his translucent form somehow looking smaller and more fragile than before. "I am contacting you to formally request a meeting between ethereal leadership and human representatives." Yu studied the former council leader with interest. "What kind of meeting, Governor?" "We wish to apply for membership in the Galactic Democratic Assembly. My people have reconsidered their position on galactic governance. We would like to contribute to the new order rather than remain isolated in opposition to it." It was a remarkable moment. The species that had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia was asking to join the organization their former subjects had created. I'll forward your request to the appropriate committees. You replied professionally. As with all applications, it will be evaluated based on your commitment to democratic principles and peaceful cooperation. After the communication ended, you reflected on how much had changed. The ethereals weren't being punished for their past actions. They were being given the same opportunity as every other species. The chance to participate in a galaxy where no one ruled over anyone else. Ambassador Lee Tae-min, the man who had walked out of the council chambers 6 months earlier, now served as humanity's senior diplomat to the former council worlds. His current assignment was perhaps the most delicate of all, negotiating with the remnant council government for the peaceful integration of their remaining territories. Ambassador, his aide informed him. High Counselor Mordeth is ready to see you now. Lee nodded and entered the chamber where the ancient ethereal waited. Mordeth looked tired, his glow dimmer than Lee remembered. The weight of watching his empire collapse had clearly taken its toll. Ambassador Lee, Mordeth said quietly, I have lived for over 3,000 years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, species achieve greatness and sink into obscurity. But I have never seen anything like what humanity has accomplished. What do you mean, High Counselor? You could have conquered the galaxy. Your technology, your military capabilities, your strategic position. You could have replaced the Council with a human empire. Instead, you chose to free the galaxy. Even now, when former Council worlds beg to join your alliance, you require them to prove their commitment to freedom, rather than simply accepting their submission. Lee considered this carefully. High Counselor, conquest is easy. Anyone with enough ships and weapons can conquer. Building something better, something that lasts, something that makes everyone stronger. That's the real challenge. And that is why you succeeded where we failed, Mordeth admitted. The Council ruled through fear and dependency. You lead through inspiration and cooperation. We created subjects. You create partners. As their meeting continued, Lee reflected on humanity's journey from unknown species to galactic power. The path hadn't been easy, and there were still challenges ahead. Void hunter incursions, resource disputes between worlds, the ongoing process of integrating former council territories into the democratic system. But for the first time in galactic history, these challenges were being faced by free peoples working together by choice, rather than subjects following orders from distant masters. Later that day, Lee received a message that made him smile. The planet Corvin, one of the first worlds to rebel against the Council, had successfully established its own democratic government. They were requesting human advisors not to rule them, but to help them learn from humanity's experience with self-governance. Similar messages arrived daily from across the galaxy. Species that had been kept in artificial dependency for centuries were learning to stand on their own feet. Some succeeded immediately, others needed time and help, but all were making the attempt. The galaxy humanity had found was ruled by fear, stagnation, and oppression. The galaxy they had helped create was noisy, chaotic, sometimes inefficient, but alive with possibility in a way it hadn't been for millennia. Captain Yu Min-ho, now patrolling the border regions where former council and free worlds met, received regular reports of peaceful integration, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, scientific cooperation, the things that connected civilizations by choice rather than force. As he watched his mixed crew of humans and aliens work together with easy familiarity, he remembered Admiral Kim's words from those first tense moments of conflict. The strongest civilizations aren't built on the subjugation of others, but on the principle that every being has the right to determine their own destiny. Looking out at the stars, at a galaxy finally free to choose its own path, you knew they had proven that principle true. The age of empires was over. The age of cooperation had begun, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy was truly at peace. The first crack in the Council's empire appeared exactly 1 month after the human fleet's victory. The planet Nexaris, a wealthy trading world in the outer spiral, formally requested protection from the Human Defense Force. Within hours, 2 more worlds followed, Vulthan and Kepler 442b. All 3 cited the same reasons: excessive council taxation, forced military conscription, and centuries of resource extraction that left their populations poor while council elites grew rich. Ambassador Park Ji-ho arrived at Concordia Prime not as a supplicant, but as a representative of a new galactic power. Unlike the previous human delegation, Park came with a full diplomatic team and a clear agenda. The council chamber, once a symbol of absolute authority, now felt more like a courtroom where the accused were about to face judgment. High Counselor Mordeth, Park began, his voice calm and professional. I come with an offer of terms for the peaceful transition of galactic governance. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Transition of governance. The humans weren't asking to join the council or even to coexist with it. They were offering to replace it. You speak as if the council has already fallen, Mordeth replied, his ancient voice trembling with suppressed anger. We still command the loyalty of 800 worlds. Park consulted his tablet with the casual air of someone checking a weather report. Actually, High Counselor, current intelligence suggests that number has dropped to 612 worlds as of this morning, and falling rapidly. Before Mordeth could respond, alerts began flashing throughout the chamber. Emergency communications from across council space. Rebellion on Thanros Prime. Independence declared by the Centauri Alliance. Military uprisings in the Vega sector. The galaxy was coming apart at the seams. Admiral Zhang Sumi stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching council loyalist forces approach the Nexaris system. The enemy fleet was large, nearly 400 ships, but they moved with the slow, predictable patterns that humanity had studied for 2 centuries. Admiral, called out her tactical officer, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 council ships. They're asking permission to join our forces. Zhang nodded grimly. This was becoming common. Council crews who had grown tired of serving an empire that treated them as expendable were switching sides in increasing numbers. Many brought valuable intelligence about council military capabilities and planned operations. Grant their requests and integrate them into our formation, she ordered. Make sure they understand our rules of engagement. We protect civilians, we avoid unnecessary destruction, and we give every enemy the chance to surrender before opening fire. The battle for Nexaris lasted less than 20 minutes. Council ships that had once seemed invincible were systematically disabled by human weapons they couldn't counter. The few loyalist vessels that chose to fight to the end were destroyed quickly and efficiently. Most, however, chose surrender when they realized the futility of resistance. Commander Oh Se-hun, captain of the stealth ship Daegu Liberator, was demonstrating human jump technology to a group of rebel commanders in a secret meeting on the planet Corvin. The aliens watched in amazement as holographic displays showed his ship appearing simultaneously in 3 different star systems. Impossible, muttered General Takmor, a massive Chronari whose loyalty to the Council had crumbled when he learned how his people were being exploited. Council science says matter cannot exist in multiple locations at once. Council science is outdated by about 5 centuries, O replied with a slight smile. Human quantum tunneling drives don't actually place the ship in multiple locations. They create quantum probability fields that allow instantaneous movement between any points where the field overlaps. The alien commanders exchanged glances. If humans could appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning, then no council stronghold was safe. Commander O, said Admiral Vexithani, a former council loyalist whose species had been reduced to near slavery by council policies. Your people could have conquered the galaxy by now. Why do you instead help us gain our freedom? O considered the question carefully. Because conquest creates enemies. Freedom creates allies. We learned long ago that the strongest civilizations are built on cooperation, not domination. Back on Earth, General Nam Hae-jin coordinated the growing rebellion from her command center in Seoul. Her screen showed the real-time collapse of council authority across the galaxy. What had begun as humanity's refusal to submit had become a galaxy-wide revolution. General, reported Colonel Kim Young-ho, we're receiving formal requests for assistance from the Andromeda Trade Coalition, the Free Worlds of Epsilon and the Draconian Republic. They're offering full military alliance in exchange for protection from council retaliation. Nam studied the tactical displays showing ship movements across known space. Approved. Deploy Defense Fleet 7 to Andromeda space, Fleet 9 to the Epsilon sector, and have Admiral Park's forces establish defensive positions around the Draconian homeworld. The irony wasn't lost on her. The Council had created this situation through centuries of oppressive rule. Their harsh taxation, military conscription, and resource exploitation had left hundreds of worlds ready to rebel. They had only needed someone to show them that the Council could be beaten. On Concordia Prime, High Counselor Mordeth received the latest casualty reports with growing despair. In 6 weeks of fighting, the Council had lost over 3,000 ships and control of nearly 200 worlds. Human forces, meanwhile, had suffered minimal losses while gaining dozens of powerful allies. High Counselor, reported Intelligence Director Vexithari, our analysts believe the human military strategy is based on a concept they call liberation warfare. They don't seek to conquer territories or subjugate populations. Instead, they remove council authority and allow local governments to choose their own path forward. And what do most choose? Alliance with humanity, sir. The humans offer better trade agreements, defensive pacts, and most importantly, genuine autonomy. Many worlds see this as their first taste of real freedom in centuries. Counselor Thexandra, who had been silent throughout the briefing, finally spoke. High Counselor, we must face the reality of our situation. We cannot defeat humanity militarily. Their technology is superior. Their tactics are more flexible, and they have turned half the galaxy against us. Perhaps it is time to consider accommodation. The word hung in the air like a curse. Accommodation meant accepting humanity as an equal, or perhaps even as a superior power. For beings who had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia, it was almost unthinkable. What exactly are you suggesting? Mordeth asked. Negotiation, Thexandra replied quietly. Find out what the humans actually want. Perhaps we can reach some arrangement that preserves what remains of the Council, while accepting the new reality. Before Mordeth could respond, new alerts flooded the chamber. The ethereal homeworld itself was under attack. Not by human forces, but by a coalition of former Council species led by the Vorthak Confederation. The rebellion had reached the very heart of the Empire. Mordeth stared at the tactical displays showing enemy fleets approaching the world where his people had been born. For the first time in his ancient life, he felt something he had never experienced before. The fear of defeat. Send a message to Ambassador Park, he said quietly. Tell him the Council is ready to discuss terms. The age of Council dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. Dr. Park So-jin stared at her computer screen in the small research lab on Kepler 442b. The message from Earth had arrived 3 hours ago, but she still couldn't believe what she was reading. Her hand shook as she read it again. The morning had started like any other day at the Galactic Research Station. Park So-jin was studying the strange blue plants that grew near the station's water treatment facility. These plants seemed to clean water naturally, which could help many worlds across the galaxy. She loved her work here, far from Earth, learning about alien life forms that most humans had never seen. The research station was home to scientists from 12 different species. Park So-jin was the only human, but that didn't bother her. The other scientists treated her well enough, though she noticed they often spoke more slowly when talking to her, as if she might not understand their advanced concepts. Dr. Vextal, a tall gray alien with 4 arms, had stopped by her lab that morning. Still playing with plants, human? He had said with what might have been a smile. His species, the Mordak, were known for their skill with technology. Perhaps you should study something more important. These plants are just weeds. Park So-jin had smiled back politely. Every life form teaches us something new, she replied. She had learned not to argue with her colleagues about the value of her research. They would understand someday. But then the emergency message arrived from Earth Science Council. Park So-jin's blood went cold as she read the words on her screen. The Hegemony Coalition had given humanity an ultimatum. They wanted Earth's oceans, all of them. According to the message, 12 powerful alien species had joined together to demand that humans give up their homeworld's water. The coalition claimed that humans were too primitive to properly manage such a valuable resource. They said Earth's oceans should be used for important biomanufacturing projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. The coalition had given humanity 30 rotations to comply. That was about 45 Earth days. If humans refused, the message said, the coalition would take corrective action to solve the problem. Park So-jin felt sick to her stomach. Corrective action sounded like a polite way of saying war. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept racing. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for only 2 years. Humans had barely learned to travel between stars, while some of these alien species had been exploring space for thousands of years. How could Earth possibly fight against 12 advanced civilizations? The day dragged on. Park Seo-jin found herself making mistakes in her research, her thoughts constantly returning to Earth. She thought about her parents in Seoul, her brother who worked on Luna Colony, her friends scattered across the solar system. Would they all have to leave their homes and live on some alien reservation world? That evening, Park Seo-jin received a call from Ambassador Lim Da-eun, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. Lim Da-eun's face appeared on the communication screen looking tired and worried. "Dr. Park," Lim Da-eun said, "I'm sure you've heard the news. I need you to observe the alien reactions at your station. Notice what they say, how they act. Send me regular reports, of course," Park Seo-jin replied. "But Ambassador, is this real? Are they really going to force us off Earth?" Lim Da-eun's expression darkened. High Regent Vorthak made the demand himself. He says humans are wasting Earth's water resources. The Coalition believes our oceans could support biofactories that would produce medical supplies for the entire galaxy. "But Earth is our home," Park Seo-jin said quietly. "I know. I'm trying to negotiate, but..." Lim Da-eun paused. The other council members seem to think this is reasonable. They say humans are still newcomers and should be willing to make sacrifices for the greater good. After the call ended, Park Seo-jin sat in her small quarters, staring out at the alien landscape. Twin moons hung in the purple sky, and strange bird-like creatures flew between the crystalline trees. This world was beautiful, but it wasn't home. The next few days were difficult. Park Seo-jin watched her alien colleagues carefully, as Ambassador Lim Da-eun had requested. She noticed that most of them seemed to support the Coalition's demands. During meals in the common area, she overheard conversations about how humans had been lucky to find such a water-rich world when they were so primitive. Dr. Vextal approached her again on the fourth day. "I heard about your species' situation," he said, his forearms moving in what she recognized as a gesture of sympathy. "It is unfortunate, but perhaps this is for the best. Humans will learn much by living among more advanced species. You might even become civilized eventually." Park Seo-jin forced herself to smile. "Thank you for your concern." "The Coalition is not unreasonable," Vextal continued. "They will provide your species with suitable worlds. Planets with good soil for your agriculture. You humans are excellent farmers, after all. That is something to be proud of." That night, Park Seo-jin sent her first report to Ambassador Lim Da-eun. She described how the aliens at the station seemed to view the situation as a natural development. They saw humans as a primitive species that had stumbled upon valuable resources by accident. The aliens believed they were actually helping humanity by forcing them to integrate more fully with galactic civilization. Park Seo-jin also mentioned something else she had noticed. The aliens spoke about human military capabilities with amusement. They had studied Earth's nations and their separate armies. The Coalition seemed confident that humanity's divided military forces could offer no real resistance to their advanced fleets. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Yoon Dong-wook was holding emergency meetings with world leaders. The news reports that reached the research station showed crowds of people in major cities, some protesting, others praying, many simply afraid. But there was something in General Yoon's statements that caught Park Seo-jin's attention. He spoke about Earth's response to the ultimatum, not about surrender or evacuation plans. He mentioned that Earth's United Defense Council was evaluating all options. His words seemed carefully chosen, as if he was speaking to multiple audiences at the same time. Admiral Lee Tae-ho, the commander of Earth's small space fleet, gave a brief interview to the global news networks. He looked calm, almost relaxed as he spoke about protecting humanity's interests and ensuring Earth's security. Park Seo-jin found his confidence strange, given the overwhelming odds against them. As the days passed and the deadline approached, Park Seo-jin continued sending reports about the alien attitudes at the research station. The other species seemed absolutely certain that humans would comply with the Coalition's demands. They spoke about it as an inevitable outcome, like a natural law of physics. On the 20th day of the ultimatum, Park Seo-jin received an encrypted message from Earth. It was brief and puzzling. "Continue your research. Trust in humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. The plants you study may be more important than anyone realizes." She read the message 3 times, trying to understand its meaning. What did her research on water-cleaning plants have to do with Earth's crisis? And why did the message sound so confident when Earth faced impossible odds? That night, as she looked out at the alien stars, Park So-jin wondered if there was more to humanity's situation than met the eye. The coalition might think they knew everything about human capabilities, but perhaps they were about to learn something new.